has taken their seats. Ladies and gentlemen, but I think that after one day of long discussions, I could say, dear friends, we have reached the highlight of Civil Society Forum. And as I mentioned before, then the whole exercise was targeted at recommendations to collect different views from 12 member states of 3Cs initiative and to put those ideas and recommendations on the paper and submit them later to the heads of states in the summit in Riga in June. So how we proceed? So I will invite one by one panelists, moderators of panel to present the first summary of the discussions, because later on they will be expanded in a more solid manner, but today it's important to summarize what we have discussed and what is the added value of today's discussion. So the first panel was devoted to connectivity, and there were two moderators, Vaiva Rubesa and Albin Sibera. Please, so 5-7 minutes are yours for short summary. Who will?
Thank you very much. I must say that besides the two of us being moderators, it was a very interesting and diverse group of people that had an opinion on a very diverse, actually, scope of subjects. We talked about, in terms of in connectivity, we spoke about infrastructure, renewable energy, alternative energy, digital solutions, and at the end of the day, even the 3SI itself was discussed. What do you look at when you look at this very diverse part? It is the need, actually, for priorities, for alignment, for common understanding, common standards, and voice. And I would say that one of the things we did not discuss, but that is a conclusion after you look at all of the flip charts that we filled out, was that we don't have enough of a common voice and understanding because we don't have media even that report about each other. Whether it's television or television, old-fashioned, anything that is filmed, let's put it this way. And secondly, we probably don't have an education system that furthers genuine cross-country, cross-border information about what is important to different countries. One of the very concrete, I'd say, proposals was that 3SI become in some way a part of the TEN-T corridor, which I can only support because I know that that is where a lot of power and money lies in the Commission, if nowhere else. The topics were, number one, around enhancing common energy infrastructure and regional cooperation within that, especially going towards renewable energy, but then the risk or the threat or the weakness into all of this is how to make sure that this is understandable and affordable to the average citizen. And that's when you come back also to civil society, because people need to understand in totality why those kinds of changes and investments are being done. Clearly, particularly in the 3SI region, there's a need to enhance transportation infrastructure and tourism, which is really an opportunity to create modern 21st century infrastructure, emphasizing from roads to rail. And I would add that I think that by the end of the Ukrainian war, with the need of everything that will have to be rebuilt there, it is an opportunity for 3SI to have a very fresh look at as to what modern infrastructure entails and is needed and how to rebuild it efficiently and effectively, involving us all. Energy, big topic that is not going to go away. Green energy. Some mentioned the dependence on Russia and how to move away from it. And clearly there were some mentions of climate consequences, but we actually didn't get into that. All began with 5G connectivity. Interestingly enough, if you take a look through the 3SI countries, some countries are very far along in 5G connectivity. Others are, I would say, limping behind. So how do you align on it all? Same speed, same quality, I'd say same costs, hopefully low to everybody concerned. In the discussion, in the different parts that people pointed out, the discussion was really underpinned by common values and how to surmount language, how to ensure democracy through all, and human rights. So it's not only an issue discussion, it's actually a values discussion. Are we aligned on it within the 12 countries involved in 3SI, and it probably needs continuous refreshing at the end of the day. Being a business person, it was an interesting discussion, but I think we have a long way to go before policymakers, business people, and more importantly, civil society are able to discuss these issues on the same level, on the same platform, with the same words in a multi-stakeholder environment. It was interesting. I hope that our next summary will be even better.
Thank you, Baiba. So very diverse landscape of so many topics. I bet that panel on security was as rich as the connectivity. So two moderators, Sandis Raders and Oana Popescu. Unfortunately, Oana had to leave, so Sandis, now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I had the possibility also to follow the digital panel, therefore I am using notes. I think the panel on security was really interesting and very important because this is the region without the real identity brand. And that was one of the points also our group emphasized that should be our target, our aim to enhance in the future. The initiative 3Cs or Intermarium is politically motivated, economically or politically motivated, economically powered, and socially beneficial. But especially since February 24, it bears very significant security threats within itself. And from all of our discussions, I managed to divide our findings or conclusions in 4 specific parts. Our task was not to focus on the events relating to Ukraine, but we could not omit this. 4 of the 12 countries are bordering Ukraine, and the rest are feeling the consequences of the ongoing war in Ukraine. What struck me most was our utmost focus and salience that the group attached to the values and the regimes that sometimes we forget are very important, like democracy, which for many is a culture, is a value. Those are the institutions and the freedom, civilian freedoms, so political parties and organizations that point at crucial and important points for the governments. And we also mentioned in our findings that the government should be open with specific example by the Czech Republic. The previous one was not. The civilian organizations had to knock on the doors. The wise government keeps the door to the civilian society open because civilian society organizations bear significant knowledge, expertise that is accumulated through the research. Therefore, instead of having just view, which is the case for the public institutions, their operation is dwelling on decisions. Civilian society has a vision for the future. So if the government has the possibility to turn the ship in the short term, civilian society has the possibility to put the flag in front of the tanker for the future. Civilian society is also capable of showing the broad picture to specific problems, like, for example, different derivatives from energy security are relating to the security. So civilian society should cooperate with companies that are responsible for production of the energy and also for the stakeholders utilizing the energy and bring up alternatives and different solutions for the debate. Civilian society is also important not only as active partner for the government, but also someone that is setting the example, transparency, lack of corruption. Research journalists are the ones that unveil corruption and crimes across the borders. We need strong media representatives. And here I would like to transcend to my second point, which is information and narratives. We are overtly focusing on tracing the malign Russian narratives into our countries that label our countries, our societies as failing or failed. That is not the case. We're actually quite successful. But we should focus on the ways our government and institutions are communicating with the local societies and also public diplomacy. There is much room for investment, and civilian societies as observers and participants can become active participants, not only to fight the corruption, but also to enhance the communication between the public institutions and the society. One of the areas that stood out was, of course, energy. And when we are talking energy, Russia is the word that shouldn't slip our attention. If Russia quits the Nord Pool spot, we must look at the prices and changes there. There is alternative to the Russian gas in Europe, LNGs and green energy. Actually, the opportunities that the sanctions and worsening of the relations with Russia has inflicted on Europe is the Green Deal, the possibility to diversify and enhance the green energy in the region. Therefore, it creates more jobs, innovation, and eventually will be beneficial for the region and the framework nations. Last but not least, security. The war in Ukraine that is fighting for the European security shows conventional security is nowhere gone. Ukraine at the moment is fighting for Europe, but it is essential to admit that the United States is indispensable for the region that I call the American part of Europe. There is a huge demand for the security guarantees from the United States in Central Eastern Europe, as it is in the region that is covered by 3 seas and partner countries. So we need a strong presence of the United States. By cooperating among each other, we can also work with the groups, lobby groups that work with the Congress, that is quite frequently way more hawkish when it comes to the foreign policy formulation vis-à-vis Russia. The security situation is transforming, so should the military, which is aging. A couple of hardware items that are present in this region should be replaced with novel ones. There must be an improvement in the logistics and infrastructure to make sure we are ready to provide sufficient host nation support. Eventually, those countries who were not aware about the security challenges are now facing the reality when Russia is trying to take back everything that was lost to the collapse of the Soviet Union or the Russian Empire. Therefore, our societies must enhance the societal resilience, always ready to address any challenges that are coming from the unpleasant neighborhood in which we are geographically located. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandis. Thank you for providing us, again, very comprehensive landscape of security in our region. And even despite the fact that we are very much looking into the direction of hard security, soft security agenda is not narrowing down, but just opposite, it's getting wider. Now I'll give floor to Krzysztof Izdebski, who is representing 2 moderators on digitalization issue. The second was Dagny Elenia, and she had to leave. So, Krzysztof, please.
Thank you so much for this. Very briefly, we were in the digitalization group, and we started with focusing or start to select which topics under the very broad topic of digitalization is something that is important for the civil society, that has an impact on civil society, and most importantly, the civil society could be engaged and can actually support states in doing so. So we were talking about cybersecurity and disinformation and safe and trustworthy AI, because this is also out of some other topics that we thought that these two are the most crucial in terms of the Free Seas Initiative and the possibility of engaging or comforting the civil society in Free Seas Initiative countries. So on cybersecurity and disinformation, we are very much focused, of course, on the question of disinformation. I would say from two perspectives. The first perspective was media and the role of media, because as the civil society, maybe also this is important, we not only understand civil society organizations, but also journalists, academics, and entrepreneurs, not necessarily defined only as business as such, but we're thinking about startup scene and all these like small and medium businesses. So in terms of cybersecurity and disinformation, again, what we were thinking about the things that are really important, and we will recommend it to the Free Seas Initiative states to support. It's, of course, no big, surprise here, a fund for good quality media project. But we think that this is a very crucial, because we don't have a good resources when it comes to the good quality media, not because they're not there, but because they are heavily underfunded. And this is one of the most important things we thought as a group in terms of bringing the real fight with disinformation, so more credible information, thanks to the good quality media. Also, we thought that the region should be more interconnected. There was even the very interesting recommendation, or the more investment in work in local languages, also in terms of exchanging the views, impressions, facts about countries of the Free Seas Initiatives, because also, I think it haven't been actually said, but it's kind of, we need some kind of a media Erasmus in the region, basically, also to promote not only the initiative as such, which is of course a beautiful concept, but also having a possibility to learn more about our countries, because as it was said at the very beginning of the conference, also we mostly focus on regions, like smaller regions, not thinking in Romania what's going on in Latvia, for example, or opposite. So this is also something that we would like to recommend, but again in this spirit of building an ecosystem, including funding. Also, we talked quite a lot about digital literacy or education in this regard as one of the pillars of fight with disinformation. The challenge is, of course, how to convince the people to participate in any of the education or approach, courses, whatever. So this is something that we're leaving, and this is a very concrete recommendation. We will leave this practical consideration, how to make it effective, but we're sure that we have to do something about it, to the Free Seas Initiative Center for Digital Literacy, which could engage multiple stakeholders there. And also, in terms of cybersecurity, this is the recommendation that is not super new, also in the terms of the Free Seas Initiative, but we, again, in this spirit of cooperation, we see as super important, so the Cybersecurity Center for all the countries of the initiative. And when it comes to artificial intelligence, we define it as a very challenging thing, but also we had this discussion how much, as the Free Seas Initiatives, we are able to influence the more human-centric approach, I would say. But what we discussed in the terms of recommendation, we should try to be very concrete in a work of bringing the algorithms more accountable or more transparent, and giving a chance, at least to citizens that are being subject to the AI decision-making, to understand how does it work, and this is probably in line with the AI Act, which is now in the European Union. A matter of implementation is important, and that's it, actually. Thank you very much, and hope we'll get there.
Thank you, Christoph. Indeed, very often when people are debating issues of digitalization, there is everything artificial intelligence, so 5G, whatever. And thank you for emphasizing human-centric approach, because human beings very often disappear from the digitalization landscape. So thank you. Yeah, indeed. So now we came to the last panel, which was on governance issues. We had two fantastic moderators, Dawn Sauers and Mantas Bilaišis. So who of you is going to present? Mantas, please, floor is yours.
So, dear colleagues, I'll try to briefly summarize the discussions from the governance panel. So, to begin with, the 3Cs initiative compared to other formats within Europe is young. That's one insight. So before it's 60 years old, let's not jump to conclusions, what it can do and what it cannot. But one thing we found is that it is a format that still is looking for a niche. So basically it's flexible but not stable yet. And that stabilization needs time. So that niche is really productive and creates value. That's important. One important element from the point of view of communication, which is important to stress, that 3Cs initiative is within Europe. It has to work as steroids for European integration, meaning that it's a coordination format for tools that already exist for the most part. So we're more effectively closing the gap of development. Another important thing that the 3Cs geographical scope is very big. So finding a commonality is not that easy. And we have found already the structures and projects that work. So the fund that exists is already an institutional result of the 3Cs initiative. What we see is that we probably need to go incrementally to find if there's anything beyond that. And our discussion began with the question, should we institutionalize with some sort of an executive structure? We found that at the moment, probably that would be ill-advised, because that institutional structure would kind of develop its own agenda, perhaps not for the best of the initiative. But one venue we found, and then this idea of this event itself, the civil society event, is that there is a multilateralism not only between states as the 3Cs initiative, but something that creates persistency, institutional persistency, is multi-stakeholder formats. So you engage civil society and businesses, and as the chairmanship moves on from country to country, it's very likely that the political leadership will change, and by the time you have a rotation back into the same country, you'll have different political leaders. But civil society and very often businesses are more stable. So they could create this institutional memory, institutional persistency. So from the two broad options of focusing on giving executive muscles from member states and engaging other stakeholders, we see that this is possible, various formats which of course need to be worked out further. One final point is that our discussion, and I'm glad to say this, essentially repeated a lot of the narratives that have already been told from the other panels. One place where that initial kind of movement to a more stabilized structure by involving other stakeholders might go should be in terms of communication. What many of the panelists pointed out, that even the experts in member states do not know of the idea of the term. So it's an important work to disseminate knowledge. And on top of that, of course, the achievements, the projects that have achieved need to have this label of 3 Cs attached. So the value that is already achieved is produced and given to the judgment of populations. And so a creation of greater transparency might be also well advised. And one special point that came out of governance is that the three broad narratives of security, of infrastructure development and economic growth, this value needs to be well framed and well identified and attributed to the 3 Cs initiative rather than something else. So that needs some work, and therefore probably the current format with only the fund running kind of incognito the investment process is not enough. Some sort of resource needs to be allocated for that communication idea, and also to establish that kind of analytical competence to attribute the value created by 3 Cs rather than something else or just a conjuncture of situations. So with that I conclude and give back the floor.
Thank you, Mantis. If I would like now to summarize 4 presentations from 4 panels, I would say that Baiba gave me an advice what could be the final message. And I think that this final message is indeed the ability of 3 stakeholders to cooperate closely hand to hand. And these 3 stakeholders are policymakers, business, and civil society. And if those 3 participants will meet at one meeting, hopefully next year, wherever summit will take place, it will be a breakthrough in building new regional identity, at least attempt to build regional identity of the 3 Cs. And now it's a moment to pay tribute to all of those who made possible this event to take place here in this palace, and I would like to start thanking President's office. First of all, President himself, who initiated this forum from all 12 countries, and all who were engaged in preparation of this event. Then Edgars Bondars. Edgar, where are you? Oh, you're here on the front line. So Edgars was at the core, he was the heart of the Civil Society Forum, and he pushed all of us into direction of this success story, which we are having today, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Then Visegrad Insight, so thank you for your advice, because you are so well connected with Central and Eastern Europe, and your advice was very decisive in that respect. And then I thank LATO team, Sigita. Where are you, Sigita? Sigita, you are our hero, because we all know what a hard work you have done together with Inga and also with all volunteers here who assisted in organizing this event. And on top of all of that, I would like to thank all you who participated, who came, who contributed, and actually you are also heroes of today, like Sigita, because what you have debated, what moderators later on will put on the table, will appear on the tables in the folders of politicians who will come to Riga in June, and your ideas will not be lost or disappear somewhere in the outer space. They will remain here. So thank you very much, and I hope that we could meet next year in the summit of 3 Cs and probably Forum of Civil Society. Thank you, and safe trip back. Thank you.
Thanks to Jeanette.